Hi, my name is Henry Oji. I'm a portrait and fine art photographer based in Abuja, Nigeria. Today, we're going to be learning how to combine strobes with natural light using the A7R4 and the 24 G Master lens. Today helping us is Sarah, a beautiful model. She's going to be our muse. I hope you like the images we're going to create today. Thank you. So just in case you're wondering, what is ambient light? Ambient light is available light. In this situation, before we introduce strobe, my ambient light is any form of lighting that is affecting the exposure of not just my subject, but also the surroundings. So as you can see, we have some greenery at the back. We have light that is falling on her. So it's an overcast day. So there's really no proper direction of light. It can be good, it can be bad, but as a photographer, you need to know how to wield your light in situations like this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take my ambient reading. The reason why I want to take my ambient reading is to know if at all I need light. If I don't need light, I can shoot with natural light. If I do need light, then I need to know how much or what amount of light to introduce to my subject. Do I want to balance the exposure, make it look like I was using light but I wasn't using light? Or do I want to overexpose my subject or deliberately underexpose my background? Today I'm going to be using the A7R4 together with the 24mm, creating really nice images. So let's have some shots. This is my ambient reading. This is what I can see. Okay, this is how I want my image to look at the moment. So I'm going to take a couple of shots with just natural lights. So Sarah, if you please move this way. Good. Something that I particularly like about the A7R4, I don't have to go all the way down. Amazing stuff. Composition is easier with this camera. Say for example, I want the background to fill my frame. I can just put the camera up here and then get my shot. I like that. Okay, good. So helping us with today's shoot is this bad boy, the 24mm G Master lens. Amazing, very wide. You guys know how to use wide angle lenses. So the thing about this is, watch this. I can actually come very close, okay, and maybe distort the dress. So let's just have some movement. Yes. Okay, good. I'll just count for you. 1, 2, 3. 1 to go. Beautiful. It allows me to come very close and also exaggerate the height or the dress. It's an amazing lens. We don't have enough sunlight. Everything is overcast. So I'm going to introduce my strobe to just give it a bit of a punch. But before we do that, I want to see how or what the image will look like when I'm using too much light. Too much light may not necessarily be bad. It might be good if that's the direction that you're going for. But let's see. Helping us today is Mr. B. Can you please come this way? I'm always trying to put my light from the right-hand side, 45 degrees if you want to call it that way. Okay. Then I'm going to ask him to come close to my subject. Everywhere she goes at continuous focus is just right, spot on. I love that. So now I want to compare what the first image is without strobe light to the next image with strobe light. Okay, Mr. B, can you give me the power at 8.0, please? Whenever you are trying to photograph or combine your ambient light with strobe, one of the things you need to pay attention to is the power of the light. You really don't want the face to be overexposed. You want to go for balance. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to turn down, or watch this. Before I turn down, I can actually just change my exposure from my camera just with one dial. I can go let me see, I'm trying to go maybe 3 stops or 2 stops. I can now move my aperture from f2.8 to f4 perhaps. Now we already know from our exposure that whenever I change my aperture, it's going to change the power on my light. So I don't really have to go all the way to the light. All I need to do is narrow my lens opening, and that can also restrict the amount of light that is falling on my subject. I like the light that is falling on my subject. Very, very dreamy. I love it. The red is popping, but we've lost the greens. Okay, we've lost the greens. There's really no detail with the background and the rest of the greens. So what I'm going to do is try and open up the ambience. I can do that by changing my shutter speed. I'm currently shooting at 1/160th of a second. Now I'm doing 1/50. I need to give some details to the greens. In the previous image, we had underexposed the background. Okay, now I want to give some details to the greens. Good. As you guys can see, something very beautiful about this camera is how it's able to track the focus irrespective of where she moves. I'm going to tell her to do 360 now, and I can bet you I'm not going to miss any focus. Just watch that. Can you do 360 for me, please? Okay, and the face tracking is going to follow her all the way. Go. Excellent. That's it. Beautiful, beautiful. The first thing that we've done is deliberately overexpose for our subject, thereby underexposing the rest of the background. Now I want to show you guys how to balance the exposure. Sometimes you come to a place like this, you really want to just use very little light. You don't want it to be too obvious where the direction of light is coming from. So yes, Mr. B is going to be here with light, but I'm going to go back and take my previous ambient reading, and then I'll show you how to use light as though you aren't using light. So this is very, very key, because if you're able to master this, then you've really mastered lighting, in my opinion, because the problem that we have in photography is a lot of people use a lot of light, and sometimes you really don't need a lot of light. You just need little light. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my first exposure. Let's just be sure that the ambient hasn't really changed. The sun is not out yet. We still have an overcast, and my exposure still is the same. Now I'm going to introduce light. Initially we were using a lot of light, so now I'm going to ask Mr. B to turn down the power of the light. Can you maybe go like 3 stops from 6 to 3? Okay, love it. What you notice with this set of images is that they don't really look like you're using light. Yes, we're using light, but everything seems very balanced. Okay, so what you need to pay attention to is take your ambient reading, know the exposure indices of what it is that you're trying to create, then know the amount of light to introduce without necessarily overpowering your subject or underexposing your background. Everything that we've done now looks very balanced. So I've moved her from where we were shooting before to this place, just to also see how I can introduce the sun with her skin, get some really nice shots without the light. So when the sun comes, your exposure has to change. So let's see how that works. I'm going to be working with the 85mm G Master 1.4. Amazing lens. Really nice bouquet. Something you should pay attention to is that the sunlight is coming from my left. Okay, it's already sufficient to illuminate this side of my model, so I'm going to bring my light on the other side where we don't have the sun. Okay, take a couple of shots. I'm very okay with my exposure, okay? So I'm just going to introduce this guy in front of my lens, just to give it a very, very dreamy mode. I don't want too much movement. I just want to create some really nice soft bouquet. Beautiful, beautiful. As you can see with the 85, even with all these distractions in front of the lens, I'm still able to spot my subject easily without any issues. Because I'm using the 85, I want to get some very tight shots so I can show you the type of bouquet that you're able to enjoy when you're using the 85 1.4. My first image, as usual, is always without light, just to see if I need light, and if I do need light, where I'm bringing my light from. First exposure, her eyes are a bit dark. I really don't like that, so I want to introduce some catch lights to the eyes and then fill in the shadows. So Iman, can you please come? And then I'm also going to have my light just to give a bit of punch. Okay, now watch what I'm doing with the reflector. The reflector should be in the opposite direction of your sunlight, and now watch what that does. Okay, can you see that? So look at me. Can you see the catch light in the eyes? Excellent. So it really makes for interesting portrait pictures. Good. As a photographer, when you're combining strobe with ambient light, be ready to make adjustments, okay? Sometimes the light is not always going to be here. You can have light behind you. In this specific situation, we have the sunlight right behind her. And what I like about that is the highlight that it creates on the hair. Can you see that? So this is backlight. Your strongest source of light is behind her. How are you going to be able to control that light? The first thing I want to do, as always, is take my ambient reading. The first exposure, damn nice. Okay, I can deliberately underexpose because I'm having a lot of light behind her, and I really don't want that light to affect my exposure, so I can underexpose that light. And then it's a perfect place to introduce your reflector because we have this light here, and then now I can bounce all that light back to her and also introduce my strobe light. So put this here, make sure you can see the light. Can I have that pose? Good, excellent, love it, love it. Good. Now guys, let's talk about the color. The color is amazing. The greens, the reds, everything is really just popping. I absolutely love this. Still with the beautiful model Sarah. Remember, we're talking about how to combine ambient light with strobe. Now our sun has moved and we're going to use our sunlight as our main light. We're still using the A7R4. I've changed my lens. I'm going wide. I need to be able to have a very nice composition, show a bit of the train and the red dress. But remember, the first shot, always take your ambient reading. Whether it is you moving in relation to the light or the light is moving in relation to you, your ambient reading is always going to change when you're working outdoors. So my first shot is to take my ambient reading. I already know where my light is coming from. The moment I stand here, my light is directly behind me. I know where my shadows are going to be. So my first shot is the ambient reading. So I don't really want her to do much, okay? I'm just doing this for exposure's sake. So now that I've taken my ambient reading, I'm currently going to take this image at 1/200 of a second, f7.1 and ISO 64. Now, what we know from our exposure times is f7.1 is quite narrow compared to f2.8 that we were shooting the previous images at. So what does that say about the amount of light that I need? I'm going to introduce light in such a way that it overpowers the effect of the sunlight. Let me show you that. So Mr. Boniface, can you come please? So I'm currently shooting this at full power. That way I can completely kill my ambient. my strobe light is completely killing every single ambient light. This is made possible because, again, like I said earlier, I'm trying to overpower my ambient. So now I'm using a lot of power in comparison to what I have available to me in terms of ambient light. Good. So now that we have our shot, we're still killing all forms of ambient. But do you know that you can also introduce ambient using strobe light? Now I'm going to have them put another strobe just inside the train to create some form of ambient light for me. I want to see what the effect is going to look like. Still on combining ambient light with strobe, what we've done now is take away our main light source. We're only going to be working with the sunlight. So the sunlight now is our main light source. However, we've left the backlight on because we're trying to use the backlight to create some form of ambience in the shot. So this is how you're going to be able to use only sunlight and one strobe, but this time the strobe is not on your subject, but your strobe is behind your subject, creating some form of ambience in the images. So now what you can see is that this images is only being lit from the sun, and then the backlight is creating ambient. This is a very cool way of working with sunlight and strobe, or rather ambient light and strobe. Pretty much the same thing. This is image 1 without the backlight creating the ambient. All we're using is the sunlight coming from behind me. And then image 2, as soon as we turn on the backlight, you can see how it's giving a lot of character into the ambience. So we've come to the last part of combining strobe with ambient light. What we've been doing all along is using natural light as our ambient light. Now we're going to be working with bulbs. Yes, this is my ambient for the last shot. How are we going to balance the exposure or overexpose? Whatever it is that you want to do is entirely up to you, is entirely up to how you want to create the images. I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to do it if I'm faced with a situation like this. So first of all, I'm going to continue with my backlight. The reason why I want the backlight, if you can see, I've gelled my backlight, okay? And now I've used the same gel as the colors of this place. I wanted to accentuate the colors of the bulb. The only source of light I'm going to be using here is the backlight. What you're going to notice with the images is that it's going to give you a very, very dreamy shot. Let's work. So as you can see with these images, I'm using my backlight to accentuate the ambient light. So I haven't necessarily killed the details in the bulb. I'm only using one light. This is one way you can combine strobe with your ambience. Combining ambient light with strobe light is pretty straightforward. I try to keep a balance. I try not to kill my ambient completely. When you walk into a room and you see bulbs, or you walk into a room and you see different forms of ambient, what you need to do is to make sure that you're using this ambient to tell the story of the image. You don't have to necessarily kill your ambient. And whenever you want to balance, everything is really about choosing the right amount of light. The right amount of light that falls on your subject, the right amount of light that you're able to expose for the ambience. And that's pretty much what all of this is all about, just like you can see from these images. Thank you for watching. I hope you've been able to learn a few things on how to combine ambient light and strobe light. Remember, the first thing you need to do is take your ambient reading. That gives you a base on when to introduce your strobe light. Whether you want to use a lot of light or not so much light is entirely up to the kind of images that you want to create. I'd like to say a special thank you to Sarah. I appreciate you. Thank you for making today possible. My name is Henry Oji, a portrait and fine art photographer based in Abuja. Until next time, peace.